So in this week's episode, we're talking about the subject of recruitment. We know how difficult it can be when you're trying to scale your company to find and attract the best talent to your business, especially because there seems an ever shrinking pool of candidates out there. So we've brought a special guest on today, Gaelle Blake. Now, Gaelle is the head of UK construction and property appointments for Hayes Recruitment. She runs a huge team of individuals who are looking to try and help businesses scale across the UK and Ireland. So Gaelle is going to dive into a few subjects that are really going to help you with your recruitment strategy. We're going to talk about your purpose and how you can instill a fresh purpose to your business. If you're ever feeling a little bit fed up and you don't know why you're doing this, we're going to discuss that, but also how you can inject that purpose and passion into your employees. We're going to talk about the benefits of getting young people into the industry and how you can potentially do that. And we're also going to talk about your recruitment plan. How far out in advance should you be planning to bring people on board? So lots of subjects that we're going to discuss today. This is really going to help you if you're trying to scale and you want to know the best way of doing it. Gaelle is going to help us discuss that subject. So I hope you enjoy the episode. So Gaelle, really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today. Great to have you on, and I know you're extremely busy in your career, so thanks for taking a bit of time out to talk to us.
No problem. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. So Gaelle, maybe you could just introduce who you are, what your current role is, and the company that you work for.
So I'm Gaelle Blake. I look after construction and property for Hayes, who are the biggest specialist recruiter in the UK and Ireland within the construction and property field. I started with Hayes straight after uni, dare I say this, 1999, and I started recruiting civil and structural engineers. So I went straight in at the bottom, basically, and as a fresh grad with no experience, and didn't know anything honestly, about construction and property. And just fell in love with the industry. Like absolutely, and within, I'd say 9 months, I was one of those saddos that wouldn't be able to walk past a site without checking the site board to see, who's the architect, who's the engineer, and I'm like, so I'd be like walking and then stopping at every site. And it kind of just gets you, doesn't it, as an industry? There's just something about it that you then suddenly find yourself reading. Like I would find myself in my own time reading things like New Civil Engineer and your construction news, and I'm like, wow, I've changed. Like, so you kind of, I think it's the people just get to you, doesn't it? It gets to you, and you're actually doing something with purpose. I think that's the big thing I love about it. I don't think we talk about that enough, but it's with purpose what we do as an industry, and I love that.
It is, yeah. It's interesting you say that about the people too, because when I was about 18, 19, I wanted a career change. And funny enough, I actually got into recruitment, computer recruitment, IT recruitment. Just wanted to try something for a few months. And I'd obviously gone from working on site with my dad since when I was 16. And then I can't remember, I was about 18, 19. And I just really missed the people. I missed the banter on site and just the construction environment. And I couldn't handle dealing with computers, like working in computer recruitment. And it taught me some incredible stuff about sales and whatever else. But yeah, you're right. There is something about people in construction. And I think too, what's interesting you say about a bit of a purpose, because there is a purpose, isn't there, genuinely with construction and what you're achieving.
Well, that's what I love about it is, to me, the people I work with, therefore me as part of the ecosystem, we build actual people's homes. We actually build hospitals, we build schools, we build cinemas, but we also build bridges that allows people to go from A to B. When you get on a road, that's us. When you open the tap in the morning, clear water comes out, that's us. When you pull the plug, the dirty water gets drained away. Well, that's us too. So whether you're cycling, whether you're running, whether you're getting in your car, whether you're in a bus lane, whether you're getting on a train, all of that is us. And I sort of feel as an industry sometimes we don't talk about the actual socio-economic impact we have. We're not here to build a microchip for people. We're here to build their homes. And it matters. And everything you read about shows that the way now we're designing buildings is with the thought of the occupants and how they will use that building, whether it's to improve their health. And you hear this about hospitals now. hospital rooms with a beautiful view, the people inside get better quicker. So to me, there's such an, I need an industry that has purpose, and it's so clear to me, so clear what construction and property does for society. And that's why I think I've stuck with it for 23 years now, because I can walk around the skyline of London genuinely and go, I put people on that project, you know, and I look at things like the Shard and I go, I know people that designed that. Yeah. And that is, to me, I'll never lose that. I'll never lose that love for it. I think when you get bitten by it.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. You're talking like a proper builder, because we're always driving around going, oh, I built that, or I put that wall up, or it's just what we do. But I think you've touched on something really important just for those listening, because sometimes we can get a little bit tired of the industry, where maybe if things aren't going the right way for us in business, especially as business owners, it can be a challenge sometimes, and you can fall out of love with your business and the industry. But I really think you've touched on a valuable point there about just remembering the value and the impact that you really are having on people's lives. And I think if you can keep tying it back to that, it can sort of stir that hunger in you again, can't it? And that purpose of why you're doing this.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be the Shard, you know, like we've got the Shard. It can be things like, you know, small things, like my son's little infant school was shut the other day because they had one of the electrician failures, and it means if you can't have the fire alarm working, even though it was in the daylight, there was no problem, they didn't have the lights on, it wasn't particularly cold, but they could not run the school because the fire alarm wasn't working, therefore we had to send them home. That would have taken someone literally minutes to fix. But to me as a parent, to my son as a child, and someone who wanted to be educated, that made what that person did, and they might have fixed it in 5 minutes, made a massive difference to him and to us. So I think it's never lost on me. You know, how can you know, if you've got a hospital, you're trying to run it and there's water pouring through the ceiling, it might take a plumber seconds to fix it, but to the people who are in that ward, it makes a massive difference. So I think it's never lost on me. And that's what like I said, I keep reminding myself of it every day, that I'm making that difference and I'm part of an ecosystem that really makes that difference. And it's why I love what I do. So it feeds me. Really feeds.
That's great. I can hear the passion in your voice there, Gaelle. So that's fantastic. So you've obviously been with Hayes a while. You've started at the bottom, but you've worked your way up. What's your current role in the business now? I know you manage quite a big team, don't you?
Yeah. So there's 300 and just under 360 people in Hayes dedicated to construction and property. So that's everything from architects. Or we follow the design process basically. So you go from the architects, civil and structural engineers, your building services, you know, all the way through your health and safety onto site. So then we've got a construction business that deals with everything on site, you know, right from the top to the bottom. And then all the way through then to the maintenance of a building that's already in existence, your property management side, your maintenance of existing buildings. So we literally do from start to finish what construction looks like is what we do. So, and we divide it into sort of the 3 kind of pillars of you design, you build, and then you maintain. So it's we're across the UK, we're into Ireland, look after Ireland as well. I mean, Hayes is a company, is global. So they would have offices pretty much most continents, quite a big business in Australia and New Zealand, in Asia as well. But I only look after the UK and Ireland business. That's my bit.
Okay, excellent. And obviously, if you've been there a while, you would have seen changes in the construction industry, particularly. We often hear that there just isn't the right applicants out there. There's a shortage of tradespeople. We hear this I'm currently in Australia, as you said, and we hear this in Australia too. There's a real shortage of good tradespeople or skilled labour out there. Have you noticed a big impact in the industry, you know, recently? Are you seeing things changing across the board?
I think there's 2 parts to this. I think there is a long-term structural issue. And then I think there's been a short-term exacerbation. So if I can answer it in 2 parts, I think the long-term structural issue is, and there was a really good graph actually, some kind of, I'm not, you know, that's what describe it, that was in The Economist actually. I can send it to you if you wanted to share it out. And it's very, very simple. What they did was they just took a load of people in further education, and all they did was they looked at, and this was in 2015, so this is 7 years ago, and they looked at all the people in any sort of further education after sort of 16. And then they looked at the demand for those, what they were studying. And what was the industry that had the biggest gap between the demand for them and the people doing it? was construction and engineering. So, and it's just a very simple graph, and it looks at the major things, it looks at marketing, it looks at various bits. So I'll send it to you because it's so visual and it's so clear to me, because now those people now are, you know, if they, for example, were studying or doing whatever in 2015, these would be people with maybe 4 or 5 years experience now in the world of work. And so if they're not choosing to study any form of, by the way, this could be BTECs, MBQs, this could be anything, or degrees if they want to be an engineer or an architect. So what we're saying is at no level are there enough people studying or doing any sort of education for what the demand is. So there's a long-term structural problem. I think it is to do with how it's also possibly perceived as an industry. And I think there's a lot, but I'm very passionate about changing perceptions about it because I care so much. And I'm in a position, fortunately, where I can change and try to change people's opinions of it. So that's something I'm trying to work on. So that's one of the big structural issues. The other big structural issue is, dare I say this, an aging demographic. So there was a baby boom population, which we all know sociologically that happened post-Second World War. And therefore, particularly we see this in, you know, quite, you know, experienced people now who are coming into their sort of late 50s, early 60s, who naturally, because there's a big boom in population, want to retire soon. And then kind of what I've just described in terms of the choices people are now making in education, there's not enough people coming in to compensate for the second thing I'm saying. So the first thing exacerbates the second, which is not enough people choosing it, lots of people getting ready for retirement. So that is the structural issue. There has then been a short-term issue, which is kind of twofold. One is Brexit. So Brexit, there has been really interesting economic research on this that's shown that 1.2 million people left the UK in Brexit, or who are EU workers. Of those, the estimation is 750,000 worked in construction. So, and quite a lot of them then in hospitality. So we as an industry lost a lot of really good, very experienced, very dedicated, very diligent people. And so they have gone and not come back. So that has exacerbated a long-term structural issue with a short-term. The second part of the short-term is what's changed. You've been reading about what's been going on in the UK in terms of the labour market, but what has happened also is that a lot of people have been choosing to be economically inactive, which means, particularly people over the age of 50, which means they're not claiming unemployment, but they are choosing not to work. And the reason they're doing that is because their house value has gone up, higher pensions, and they're looking for more flexible working. And as an industry in construction, we're not necessarily the best at thinking like, let's offer flexible working. And I'm not just talking about working from home, I'm talking flexible hours. And so there's things I think as an industry we need to do to make this more attractive, to solve almost both of those big problems. It really comes back down to, okay, what are we going to do as an industry to attract people, to make them think this is a great place to work? So that's just an area I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I think you've made some really, really valid points there. One thing I've noticed while I've been over here in Australia is that trades are more, what's the words? They're more respected over here than what they are potentially in the UK. So when people leave school, it's actually a career that people will look to do, and it's, well, you know, it's a great career. They'll earn really good money, and it's, you know, and which you would in the UK as well. But there's a different view of it over here. It's viewed the same as a tradie would potentially be viewed very similar to an architect. It's like a professional trade qualification. Where do you think it's going wrong in the UK with the perception? Like, what do you think potentially needs to be done to change that perception of children actually thinking, well, yeah, this could be a good career for me?
I think it's about us making it more attractive as an industry. I think that there is not enough people talking about how, I feel like I'm somewhat like a personal ambassador. I've got 3 sons, so I've got quite a lot of traffic of people coming in and out of my house because they're, you know, they're everything from 7 to 14. So quite a lot of friends that are around, and I feel like as soon as any of them say to me that they quite like DT or Lego or building stuff, I'm straight to, oh my goodness, you know, would you like to let me tell you all the things you could do and how amazing it would be, you never be out of work. And I think that we naturally, when a child shows interest in whether there is building things or being quite very practical, and or even being quite design led, maybe quite STEM, very good at sort of maths and quite sort of sciencey, we go straight into let's push you down tech, let's take you down the tech route. And I think as a country, I think we've done quite well economically by pushing financial services sector. I remember my husband works for an investment bank in London, and they used to say they were very interested in anyone from like an engineering, construction management background to come and work for investment banks because they had the mathematical ability, but they also were deeply practical. So they wouldn't just get lost in all the maths, they'd be coming up with good answers. So I think what happened is they've just been kids that have shown interest have been, or go maybe to go to financial services, or maybe go and work in tech, and as soon as people, you think, oh, they're really good at science or really good at maths or really good at like envisaging and building stuff, they've been nicked from other industries that maybe have a better story. I don't know if our story is good enough. I don't know if we say, we talk a lot about muddy boots and it being cold on site, and maybe again we need to sort of embrace, well, do you have to work those hours? Really, do you? If you're struggling, do you really? Or could we make it a little bit better? So I'm all for I'm quite a innovative, let's think a different way person. So I know that it's done well so far to have the industry running this way, but is there could be a better way, or could we just do it in a different way? Because the definition of insanity is carry on doing something and expect a different result. And I care too much about the industry. I want it to be the number one choice for people. I want them to go, this is the place to come. So why don't we just think a bit creatively about it? It's probably my suggestion.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously we look to the top for that to start, with government and wherever else. But at the same time, businesses themselves can lead the way in this, can't they? Thinking creatively and making it more attractive. So obviously, with a shortage of labour that's out there, it's important that businesses make themselves look attractive to try and secure that talent. What sort of tips would you? I mean, you've touched on some of them, but is there any particular tips you think companies should be exploring to try and secure workers now? What's sort of working well so that you're not looking like that dinosaur company that isn't moving and adapting with the times?
No, absolutely. And it's being really open-minded. So the people that I see doing really well with them, we're recruiting a really diverse team, is I see them really being innovative and challenging and going, do we need to work these hours, or could this person be able to work from home one day a week, or do they really have to have done this? Because we get kids to make lots of choices at 14, 15, 16 that sort of defines where they're going. And it's almost like, well, really, I interviewed the head of Sizewell C, right, for Sybil's, Dr. Sarah Williamson, like amazing woman. And she didn't even choose like maths in her A-levels first time round. It's because she worked for her dad on site. And then she went back as a mature student and then got, first and all sorts. But it's also just not pigeonholing kids too early and still attracting and being open-minded about people. I think taking on apprentices, giving people work experience, because when they come in, they'll see the difference they can make. And you're not just sitting there making a microchip, you're building someone's house, or you're making a difference to somebody. And I think if they can experience it, often they get the buzz for it. So I think the biggest thing I would say is, get out there to your local community, do try and take on young people, and it will not be lost on them even if they get to come in for a week or two's work experience. You'd be amazed how much they'll appreciate it. The other thing I would say is education is expensive now. So actually sponsoring young people to do whatever qualifications they've had, obviously with a caveat they'd come and work for you afterwards. I think that's a given. I think kids understand that. But given the cost now of further education, I think anything you can do to support them through going to college or helping them out, cost of living, anything you can do, it's kindness is not lost on people, is what I would say. And I think that's something I think we can do as an industry, is to make people feel at home. We need people to feel at home with us. We want them to choose us. Does that make sense? It feels like a beauty contest and we want to win it. It's kind of like, and it's like choose, because actually it has purpose. And I think Gen Z are really into purpose. So we've got the best purpose of all. I think outside of doctors, I think we've probably got that, and teachers, we've probably got like third in the best purpose. So we're like, We should make more of it. We're like, come over here. We've got lots of purpose.
100%, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think you touched on a real practical point there too, just about the cost of going to uni and some people are coming out of uni in so much debt, they haven't got a job lined up, whereas we could be doing so much more. I know just my nephew, actually, I took him on as an apprentice surveyor, so he come on with me as an apprentice surveyor at, was he 16 or 17? It was quite young. And by the time he's 23 now, he's now chartered, whereas some of his friends are coming out of uni with a qualification with no experience. But he's got all of his, and he still did day release to uni anyway, so he's still got his degree. But what a better start to life than just going straight down the uni path and maybe not potentially thinking of working in construction and getting a qualification behind you.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's such an amazing industry. The thing whenever my poor son's kids, friends that come around and I'm constantly going, what about this? Is exactly that's what I say to them. I say, you can travel the world with it. That's what I always say to them. And I say, you could, because it's a skill, and that's something to be really proud of. You asked me a question a bit earlier saying, how do we change people's perceptions of it? And I think it's the respect of the skill. But also I think it comes again back to purpose. I just keep saying it, but I think it's skill with a purpose. And I think it's the why, and the why is we build communities, not just metaphorically, we build communities. And I think the more as an industry, we start to push ourselves out there and go, okay, we're building things that matter here, like schools and stuff. And I think that's when you can go, so it has purpose. Do you not want a job with purpose? And I think that would tune in with the younger generation, because they're looking for things that are different than maybe, I don't feel like I'm that old, but I'm definitely Gen X. And the reality is each generation looks for something slightly different. But I think this is a generation which I really respect, because I think they've got tons of values and tons of purpose. We've got retrofit coming our way, right? We've got to make the entirety of the world net carbon zero. Who's leading the way? It's the construction property industry. It's not going to be glamorous, but we're going to be doing it, changing one boiler at a time. Well, if you've got kids that have got purpose and want purpose, what's more important than saving the planet? But again, I don't know if it's often put that way to them. Like, I'm trying to do that, but I think it's so amazing. Like, whenever I see plumbers being retrained as heat source pump engineers, I think you're saving the planet, mate. Like, full respect to you.
Yeah, you're right, Gaelle. And it's just a shame there's not more of you out there that are promoting that message. But it does start with us, doesn't it? And I think you've given some real insight there for those that might be looking to take an apprentice on, or they've got maybe their children that they're looking, what career path could my children take? I think there's some real valuable insights you've given there that will get people just thinking a little bit. So thanks for that. I just wanted to touch on Hays itself as a company, and obviously the people listening to this podcast are trying to grow businesses between sort of £1 and £5 million. Would Hays to them feel like a big company that is too big for them? You spoke earlier about putting people on the shard and things like that. Obviously, the people that are listening to this, that's too big for them. But where would Hays fit in with them as a recruitment company?
So for us, our biggest client base are SMEs, and we have grown up being the recruiter to the client base that you're talking about, and we are so grateful to them and we love working with them. And I think that the way in which we interact with them and the way that we've been built to work with them has been that local presence. So, we've got just under 100 offices in the UK, and then again in Ireland less, but the reality is it means we've got someone quite local. And as you know, and we said this right at the start of the show, it's a people-led business. And the reason that helps when we are local is we can come out and meet people and get a feel for their companies and what they're trying to achieve. And as much as virtually is great and it serves its purpose, to me, that personal touch, that being able to come and experience an organization and feel, sitting there, just sitting in a site office, you get a feel for a site straight away. Like, straight away, you get a feel for the vibe of it. It's not something you can experience on Teams or Zoom. You have to be there and feel it. And then if you feel it and sit there with them and understand what they're trying to achieve and understand their client portfolio, you then are able to better match the type of person that will love working for a company like that. You know,
Yeah, that's interesting.
people love feeling part of a team, love feeling, some people don't, you know, but what our job is to do is to get to know that company, to get a feel for who's going to thrive there, but what type of person do they need to thrive? Does that make sense? You're constantly doing this matching, and to me, that's you can't. Culture of a company is, it's like mist. You can't kind of, it's like you can't put it in a bottle. All you can do is feel it. You can feel culture, and so very, very quickly you go and meet a client, you know, and sit there and have a cup of tea with them and chat. And I've got my own high vis. I'm not wearing it today, but I've got my own high vis, my own hat, my own, you know, I've got my own steel cap boots. And you just feel it. You just feel it straight away. You can go, right, this is what they're all about. This is what they're trying to do. Right, hang on a sec. I met somebody 6 months ago that said they'd love to move if they could find someone that did this or liked that, and then you go, right, that's that person. Right, we need to make sure these two people meet, and I think they'll really enjoy it. So I think we're a business that's built on that local presence, and it never stopped being that. And that's the bit that I love. I love doing that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that is a very different approach to, I like that approach, and it's more of a partnering approach that, you know, you're trying to partner with them and help them build that business. Whereas in my mind, you know, I've dealt with construction recruitment agencies before, not Hayes, but it's more pick up the phone. I need this person. Can you find me this applicant? And it's there's no relationship there at all. You know, it's like, let's just fill a seat, and here's a load of CVs, and what do you think? So what you're explaining sounds nice. So, you know, it sounds like the way it should be done, which is great.
Well, we still are able to do that, by the way. If somebody wants a real transactional service and they just want us to, right, want this, get me these people. What I would say is, in the nicest way I'd say to your listeners, you'll pay us the same amount whether we've come to meet you or not. We'd much prefer to come and meet you, simply because it's better for you if the person sticks. Right, that's the truth of it. For you on site, the continuity that you need, you think of the amount of time it would, I mean, these are very good, you know, if we talk about tradespeople, they are professional people, they'll get on. But my point is that the stress, as you know, as a business owner, is the length of time it takes them to get on, if there's any problems, if they don't do it quite the way you need it to do. All that stress in the back of your head and your well-being is all going to be preoccupied. It's almost like your brain will be whizzing, worrying about it. Whereas, so we can do it transactionally, and you can call us up and we'll go, okay, we'll get these people over to you. But I think it's better for you as well if you go, yeah, he or she has come down, has met me, has seen what we're talking about, gone on site, understood the site dynamic. Right, okay, they get it now. They get what I'm going to need. And then it just helps us, because the biggest thing we try and do is get someone that stays. The longer they stay, the better it is actually for you, but also the better it is for us too. So I think we all benefit from long term, I'd say.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, without a doubt. The cost of just going through hires and retraining is, you know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? So yeah. I think your approach is brilliant. Just thinking about the practicalities of that. So if someone's not used an agency before and you come out and you assess, you have a chat and talk about their goals and whatever else, let's imagine now they say, yeah, right, can you help me find me a project manager to come and start? How does that work in from the practical side for you? Are you helping prepare job adverts, or are you just matching someone that you've already got on your database? What does the practical side look like generally?
It really does depend on the project, where they're at, like where is it geographically and all those things. What we're constantly doing is huge amounts of talent acquisition, in the sense of constantly, not just the advertising, but building relationships. So just as much as, by the way, our clients in construction and properties, the organizations we work with, are very people focused, so are the applicants. So the applicant also has a career that they want, aspirations that they have. And that, by the way, is not based on level. There's no like, so, there's everyone at every level has something they care about, and what we look at is what we call the move motivator. So what's of interest to them? You know, a good tradesperson, let's be honest, is probably in work. So what we're probably trying to do is get them to come to this project. So you're constantly having to maneuver people around, but what you need to do is understand what is it that that person's looking for in their career, so that you can then match them. So they might be looking for example, a site that's closer to home, because then they're not traveling as much. That's got a knock-on effect in terms of cash. It's also got a knock-on effect in terms of their well-being. So they're looking to do that. So you're constantly listening to them as to what they're wanting, and the client and what they're wanting. So we're doing a huge amount of that all the time. So we don't wait in the nicest way for you to call me and go, Gaelle, I need 6 plasterers tomorrow. We'll already be talking to the plasterers before you've asked us, because that's our job to do that. So we're just constantly doing those things to understand where they are, what they're doing, who they're working for. Now, there's very few people, let's be honest, are out of work at the moment in construction. So it's constantly, where are they? Who's looking to move? Whose contract's coming to an end? What site's coming to an end? Where can we move people? So we will do that anyway, regardless of this. And we'll constantly be doing those advertising and all the different things that we need to do that. So that when someone turns around to us and says, right, I need somebody now, we have already proactively done the work. There are some times where they might need a load of people and we just simply don't have the proactive, and that's where we need to do it on top of that. But all the advertising, all the talent acquisition, all the relationship building is done proactively.
Yeah, fantastic.
Because we need to.
Yeah. Oh no, I can imagine. Yeah, it's constant, isn't it? And it's constantly moving. Well, thinking again the practical side of things. So let's imagine now we've asked you to go and find us this project manager, and you've sent us some CVs over, and you say, right, we believe these are perfect matches for you. From, again, a practical side, with someone who may not have recruited a big role like that before, and it might be their first time for them, what should they be looking for? I know you'll be giving them guidance on the CVs that you're sending over, but any practical tips on things they should be really looking out for? Any sort of red flag things, or, you know, what would be your top tips when analysing CVs?
I would say that your CV is the summary of the experience that you have. So bear in mind on the job, depending on the job, do you need them to sign off? Do you need them to supervise other people? So depending on the job, look for those keywords. So almost decide, I think, as an employer, what is essential and what is desirable. So what are your non-negotiables that you're like, well, they have to have this because I need them to do this, I need them to do that, I need to have experience. Because let's be honest, there are practical sides to this industry. You know, if you need them to be chartered because they need to sign something off, well, that's a non-negotiable, because that's just for your insurance. You need that to happen. So I think you've got to make a list in your own head of what is essential. And then there is the desirable, what will I negotiate on? I'd like this, but it's not essential. And I think in the industry, Glenigan's did some research in January, so it's only, 8 weeks old, that said there's 42,000 vacancies in construction alone, like right now, unfilled. Ricks did a survey less than 4 weeks ago where they asked, so Ricks, you can look at the client base they've got, they did this massive survey in February that said, what is your number one problem that's holding things back at the moment? It wasn't shortage of materials, even though we know there's a material problem. It wasn't projects. It wasn't anything. What was number one? Labour was their number one. Everyone was saying shortage. So I think there's an element of, so then as an employer, if you can be one of those ones that understands the parameters that you're operating in and going, yes, I'm going to choose them, but the really smart employer will go, they're going to need to choose me. So the clever employer, so speaking to your audience now, would be like, yeah, they've got all the practical stuff I need. When I'm going to meet them, I'm going to sell this to them. And they're the ones that are doing brilliantly. The ones that do it quite old-fashioned, you know, the old-fashioned interview where almost, because I am the employer and you're the person I'm interviewing, and it's quite old-fashioned and it's almost like, will you pass my test? They're not going to do as well as the one that goes, right, Greg, what is it you're trying to achieve? Where do you want to go? This is where I want to go. Like, how can we do this in a way that actually you get the career that you need, the environment you feel safe in and you'll thrive, but also let me share with you the goals I've got, and let's see how you can also help us to reach the organizational goals we've got. And I think the ones that treat it as a real partnership, that go, we respect your career, we've also got organizational goals, how can these dovetail together? Straight away, you're going to stand out as an employer and you're going to get the cream, simply because you've treated them as a person. So
yeah, I think that is so valuable, and some really good advice there.
thinking, just going back to what you said originally, when you meet a company and you start understanding their company culture and whatever else, are you coaching a company when you try and make that match between the CV and the applicant and the company? Are you coaching the company or the director of the company who's doing the interviews on how they should be potentially selling themselves as a business and what the person might be looking for?
Absolutely. And 100%, and that's our job to do that. So our job is to say, this person's, and often this is what we are saying, this person has got another couple of interviews. Let's be really honest, with 42,000 unfilled jobs, the number one reason that organizations say they've got a problem to RICS is shortage of people. Everyone's competing. So I think it's that, what we call it, I mean, in our lingo, it's called employer value proposition. It sounds very posh, but what it really means is, how are you different to your competitors? So Greg, when you know, with your company, you probably knew or know what is different about you in comparison to your real close competitors. Like, you would have felt instinctively, they're really good at this. If you're being really unbiased, you go, they're really good at this, but I'm definitely better at that. That's what you need to get across in the interview, because they will be comparing you with the others. So it is what is unique about you. We call it unique employer value proposition, but what is it about you that's different? And if you can get that across quickly, if they are going on an interview with people that are very similar to you, then they'll have understood very quickly from you what made you different. So I think understanding yourself, and it can be really practical things like, I don't know, something that you don't even pay much attention to. Maybe I'm making this up now, but every Thursday, you just happen to, I don't know, you do a donuts run, and it's something you really enjoy doing, and you do it every week, and it's really important, and you all sit down, you'll have a cup of tea, you have a donut, you have a chat about something. Even small things that gives them an insight into your community and the culture that you would just take for granted because that's what we've always done. That just makes them feel at home. And I think the more you can make them feel safe and at home, and that they'll thrive with you, it's not always, people think money is the number one reason. It isn't. If people feel happy, they'll stay. I'm not saying money, you can't underpay them, but it's a lot more than money these days now that people look for.
Yeah. And what about, obviously the environment's got to be right, obviously the money's got to be right as well, but that might not be the main thing. What about people's career progression, and are you coaching companies on potentially where this person wants to go and how they might fulfill that need, that career progression need?
Yeah, I mean, any good recruitment consultant will tell you what this person wants to do and where they want to go. And if they're not saying it to you, ask them. And also ask the person in the interview, what do you want to do, where you want to go? Because if you don't paint a story, and the story is so important, if you don't paint the story in the interview of, I've heard you, Greg, I've understood where you want to go, let me show you how our story will go together. They're like, I'll go to the one that's explained it better to me, that shows that you've listened and took my career seriously, and that you can explain to me how your company is going to let me do that thing. So I think that it's so important that absolutely career progression. And isn't that the person you want? I mean, let's think about it. Someone comes in and they are really hungry for a career. I mean, that's your best candidate. Like, of course you want to have that conversation with them. But I think also, don't just make it about their career, make it about their personal development, because it's not always just about that. Like, there'll be things that you will be able to teach them resilience. The resilience that it's not always going to go right on site. You know that as well as I do. It doesn't always go right. Projects don't always. Sometimes some of the things they'll learn is how to handle, crises or things that don't go right. And, say, we're going to go through some stuff together in this career. It's not always going to be that it will go the way you want it to go, but I will be there to help and support and develop you. And I think as long as you caveat it, it's not all going to be moonlight and roses all the time. There'll be times where, but I've got your back. That's what people want. People look for a lot of safety at work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think people can see the honesty and transparency of business owners, can't they? And it's that they know if things are being hidden, and they get a feel for it. So I think that honesty, is really important as you're doing the interviews. So let's imagine then you've managed to find a candidate for us. We found that project manager that we wanted. In the back of my mind, if I was paying an agency fee, I'd be thinking, right, I've got to pay a fee out now for this person, but what if they go and, what if they last like a month and they're off?
You get your money
I've just
back.
got to spend all this money. Okay.
So there is a rebate. So if it's temporary or contract, you pay weekly. So we charge you once a month, but we pay the contractor or the temp once a week, if that makes sense. So effectively, we will pay them, then we'll charge you once a month for the bill. If it's a permanent employee, then we give you a rebate period spread over several months. So effectively, the longer they stay with you, obviously the less money you get back. But absolutely, the bulk of it, you get the absolute majority of it back if they're left within the first month. What we're always trying to do, though, is to avoid that, both for you and for them. It's hugely disruptive to you. The first 4 weeks, the first 2 weeks, really, you're putting the most amount of effort into them. And you haven't yet, in the nicest way, got a lot out of them yet. So you've put a lot in, they haven't given you a lot back yet. And then obviously as time goes on, then that changes. So the whole point of the interview process is to avoid that situation, so that, as you just said before, red flags or anything like that has been avoided. So you've recognized that you've had a chance to talk through any concerns that you have, and so that it avoids that situation. But yes, certainly ourselves, and I would expect good recruiters would always offer that, because we're just human beings. People make, like, at the end of the day, sometimes you think someone's going to be somewhere and they're just not, and that's okay. That just didn't quite fit into your culture. It could be them leaving, but it's also you going, it's not right, and that's okay too. So we would offer either a free replacement, or we just give the on a sliding scale the money back, and then start looking again for somebody else to come in and join, basically. I mean, there's obviously there's a stage where you have to also think, is what was it? Was there something I could have done differently? I think as long as everyone's reflecting on it, then normally you can just get the next person that goes in would be the right fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and thanks for just clarifying that, because there might be some that, again, haven't used an agency and they don't quite know how that works. So that just takes a little bit of pressure off, and that could be a barrier to them just making the phone call in the first place. So I think it's good just to clear that up. So that all sounds, pretty good. If we were now looking for someone, how far in advance do you think companies should be planning this recruitment strategy? If they want it, because we don't want to be, I know you're going to obviously get phone calls and someone says, right, can you get me someone for Monday? But generally speaking, and if we're thinking of long-term hires, how far in advance would you encourage companies to plan?
That is a really good question, because workforce planning is something that is, I think, as an industry, is starting to change. I think we used to be, as an industry, quite last minute. And I think now, actually, a lot more people, because the project's the way it's running, we realise it's much better to plan in advance. If you're looking for somebody permanently, given the context of less people, unfilled vacancies, remember also the UK's got 30 million people in work at the moment, which is the highest payrolled employees that the UK's ever had. We've also got the lowest unemployment, which is 3.7%. So the context is there's not many people available. They're already working for somebody else. So if you came to me tomorrow and said, Gaelle, I need a project manager permanently, the reality for you, Greg, would be is they're working for someone else right now. And we're, there'll be people constantly that for whatever reason want to move on, that's fine, that we're talking to. Now, in reality, by the time we've started to talk to them on your behalf, we've come to meet you, understood what it is you want, started to talk to the pool of candidates that we have, gone out there, advertised, whatever all the other things we're going to be doing. You're going to want to meet them. If it's permanent, you're going to meet them. I would say most people meet them 2 times at least. So you've got to arrange that. They're obviously at work. You're obviously busy. We're trying to get the diaries to coordinate. Then you're going to get the offer letter out. You're going to haggle over the bits and bobs in there, terms and conditions. Then, of course, they'll hand their notice in. Let's be really blunt here. Most good people will be counter-offered. Let's be absolutely honest here. And I'd rather be honest with your listeners so that they understand what will probably happen is, if you would do it, right? If it was your employee that's handing the notice in, you'd be like, oh my goodness, hang on, let me see if I can try and match it, right? You would. So there is a whole amount of work that goes into then making sure that they wouldn't accept it, or what you can do to sell so you avoid that problem when it comes around. And the contracts have got to go out, they've got to read the contract, sign it off, and then they have to work 4 weeks notice. So from start to finish, you're looking at a 12-week cycle, and it really does take about 12 weeks to have someone to come in and join you, because in reality, someone will be in work. the person you want is working for your competitor is the reality. So it's the length of time for them to be sure that you're the right person for them, for you to be sure, for them to be sure, and those two things. So I think that I would say minimum 12 weeks. If it was a contract person, shorter time frames. But again, a good site manager, even if they're on contract, they like to see projects through, and they're not going to be jumping ship. You're going to need to give a good running of, I would say, a good 4 weeks, because the longer you give us, the better quality of candidate we'll find. Does that make sense? Yeah. Temporary or permanent, because then we're not against the clock. Oh my goodness, I've got to get someone in. This is the best we can find you today. So with workforce planning, the longer you give us, the better you'll get, is normally how it works.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because it's like anyone recruiting, sometimes you do leave it to the last minute. But yeah, without a doubt, I think in this industry more than ever now, we've got a plan, haven't we? We've got a plan for it with the shortage of candidates out there. So I think that's valuable. Just one last thing I just wanted to briefly touch on. Again, you were talking about company culture, and you can assess the culture of a business. One thing that's really important, I know that you spoke about this on the pre-show, something you're passionate about is having diversity in the workplace. Why should companies be thinking about that, and would that be a conversation they would have with you, and the benefits that a diverse candidate could potentially bring to the business?
Yes, so I think, look, there's two parts to it. There's a deeply commercial side to it, and there's a values side to it. I think the deeply commercial side to having a diverse workforce is every piece of kind of business data that you look at, and Harvard's Business Review's done loads of work on this, McKinsey have done loads of work on it, is that you get better outcomes with a diverse team, whether it's of gender, sexuality, differently abled people from different ethnic minorities. People just think different ways, and therefore when you're problem solving, and let's be honest, we're a problem solving industry, and we've got the biggest problem facing the planet, which is how do we reduce net carbon zero, most of which is created during the construction process. We need different ways of thinking. So the worst thing for us is everyone thinking the same way. The best thing for us is everyone thinking differently. So just hard, cold commercial side is that a more diverse range of people will think in a different way, and therefore you'll get better outcomes, commercial outcomes. Yeah. That's not Gaelle Blake says, that's Harvard Business Review, McKinsey, Accenture, like you name them all, they'll say that to you. So it's not that. So there's a real commercial hard-nosed, actually, this is a good thing to do. There's also then like the kind of, I guess, purpose and value set is, we know, just because we've tracked the data, and then again, there's been a lot of research in this, in that people will stay long with an organization where they feel they can be their true selves. And the true self isn't fitting in a certain box of a certain pigmentation of skin, a certain gender, whatever. And the more that you can show that you've got different people in your community at work, the more people will feel I can be accepted for who I am, and I'm not worrying about pretending to be something that I'm not. I can just focus on working really hard for Greg, fixing the problems for him, and I'm not then having to deal with almost not being really myself at work. So I think in the advice that I would give is truly think about not just saying that you're diverse, but really taking maybe a bit of a gamble, a bit of a risk. If you've never taken someone on from a certain gender pool or whatever, and just remember that they're just someone else's kid, just like we're all someone's kid. How would we want our kids to be treated? And we'd want them to just be regarded as who they are and the talents they'll bring. And that doesn't come in the same looking box every time. It can look different. They could dress differently. They can be differently. They can have a different life outside of work to yours. That's okay. Can they come and help you in a different way? And I think once you can see what diversity can bring, then more importantly, outcomes, commercial outcomes, but also the joy that it can bring to an organization that different cultures, different backgrounds, whatever it can bring, then most organizations just don't look back. They love it, and they keep. And I'm passionate about it. We're a sponsor of the Design and Build Women in Construction Awards, And this isn't just about gender, this is just about, and I've done a lot of work with it to support the Building Equalities Network, which is LGBTQ plus on site. And people just feel like can be their true selves. And there's a really good movement called #LoveConstruction. And if no one of your listeners have heard of it, go and put it into any social media field. And this is not owned by us. This is just something that's called Love Construction. And it's about positive imagery of diversity on site and elsewhere. So if you have got, you know, 2 assistant site managers that are women, or someone who's openly out, or someone who's differently abled, just literally hashtag anything you're doing, LinkedIn, Facebook, you know, Instagram, TikTok, just put #LoveConstruction, and it's positive movement for change in construction. This isn't owned by me, but I love it, because I think the more we can see, more that people can see, oh, people that look like me or act like me or love the people I love, they're all like me on site. So maybe I'll be accepted on site, and maybe that's okay to be me. And I just think they're just someone else's kid. That's it. They're someone else's kid. Just how would you want your kid to be treated? That's it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Gaelle, it's been so nice to speak to someone that's so passionate about construction. It really, you can just see it oozing out of you, and it's really nice, and it was just such a positive podcast to have with you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. And I know my listeners would have got a ton of value from that. If someone wanted to reach out to Hays and talk to someone about their recruitment plans and strategies, what's the best way of them doing that?
So Hays, it's hays.co.uk or hays.ie if they're in Ireland, and then we're all across the world if they just type in Hays in their local country. And then me personally, I'm Gaelle Blake, so Gaelle Blake. I'm on LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to follow me there, I post loads of stuff about the stuff I share. Quite open. I'm quite a big content producer. So all this sort of stuff that I talk about, giving people top tips on how to recruit or how to find themselves a job, because some of your listeners might be themselves thinking, actually, I'd like to find a job myself. I want to move. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not happy. I do provide lots of content and ideas, so they can follow me, and hopefully that'll give us a few ideas.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Gaelle. We really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Cheers.